I got a song stuck in my head. Let me get my sound check here. There we go. Sounds pretty good, I suppose. Well, let me hear it. I got a song stuck in my head. There we go. Let me get my sound check here. There we go. Hello, man. Good morning, man. Good morning, Mgtows. We'll give it a few minutes or something. See if anybody's going to come in the room. If not, then I'll just go away. Oh, yeah. Hello, pretentious hermit. Hello, man. I'm just doing my Sunday sermon. So go your own way, men. Go your own way. All your sins from the past are forgiven, and you enter a new world in Mgtow. Hello, man. Hello, man. I got a song stuck in my head. It was Superstar from the Carpenters, which goes down to the low bar down there. Do you know who Thomas James Burris was? Most people don't know who Thomas James Burris is, and most people have no idea who he was. Most people would just go over it. It's a typical example of gynocentrism in our culture. Karen Carpenter died in 1983. She dated a lot of men. She dated, oh God, I couldn't even begin to tell you, but one man ended up with her. Karen Carpenter dated Tony Danza and Mark Harmon and Steve Martin, all these people. She was very popular in our time. Those soulful harmonies of long ago. Superstar, probably 100 songs, which you can get caught in your head any moment of the day and just start humming. But did you know who Tom Burris was? Well, Tom Burris was her husband. Nobody really knows that. He was a real estate developer from around the California area, I suppose, and nobody knows his name. And he evaded all popularity, and he pretty much doesn't exist in the eyes of. They blamed Tom Burris for Karen Carpenter's anorexia. Karen Carpenter had anorexia. She died in 1983. And then I thought, well, 1983 was quite a bit past the age of when feminism started. The age of feminism started right around probably the same time as the racial rights movement in America. It went long before that, but it became feminism wave 2 or 3 or whatever it was, not Mary Wollstonecraft's feminism from 1792. It was the new age of feminism, hippies and free love and all that stuff. Right around probably 1968, 67, 64, up to there with the hippie movement and all that, right past the beatnik movement, which I think was a more important movement, but then sprung on the scene a lot of these singers that were really unique in their way. The Carpenters were one, the wholesome family of the Carpenters. It was almost like she was in love with Richard, her brother, and it was kind of a creepy sort of thing. But Karen dated a lot of men, like most women did at that time, and like I said, Tony Danza, and a lot of men, and it's almost heartbreaking to the point where you just think about some of these guys that she did date. Steve Martin, Mark Harmon, there's just lots of them, but nobody knows who her husband was. And the big thing about this was that she died in 1983, married to Thomas Burris was his name. And in 1983, feminism was well on its way, and equal rights in the marriage courts. And hello, Father. No, marriage courts were changing, and this thing was supposed to present some equality in in marriage and in separations and everything. But at the death of Karen Carpenter, Thomas James Burris, her husband, didn't get any money. Can you imagine that? One of the most popular singers of all time, Karen Carpenter and the Carpenters, which amassed mega wealth at that time, which was the biggest act and everything. Her husband, she gave her family, the courts determined, because of the Hollywood presentation of the Carpenters, because they were this family, this Christian family, this perfect American family, which they really weren't. Karen died of anorexia, and she was very unhappy. But her husband, Thomas Burris, didn't get a dime on that and just faded away into obscurity in the time where everything should have been split down the middle, and Thomas Burris should be well taken care of, right to the I don't know if he's dead or not. No one ever hears of him. There is no record of wealth. But can you imagine this? Can you imagine if Tony Danza died? Which she dated, Tony Danza, and Tony Dan was married to some other person, and they gave the wealth to Tony Danza's family instead of the spouse. Oh, there'd be such a cry for such a gynocentric cry. You would never get over it. You would be like, man, they are so unfair. They didn't take care of his poor wife. He left her with nothing, and he gave it to her family. But in this case, in Karen Carpenter's case, that traditional American family, that whole hearty look that they had, that thing that they had, the courts interpreted that every dime that she had should go to her family, which her family was interpreted mother, father, and brother, instead of husband. Gynocentrism in play. But that was 1983. When you think about that, that judgment was horrendous in 1983. I know a lot of guys that got divorced in 1983 and went through the mill and had to pay alimony and child support and all that stuff. So the laws were quite the same at that time, and all those things. And but no, when it comes down to a female and her money, it went to the family instead of being split right down the middle, and fairness. So that was always, I just had this song caught in my head this morning, and I started, man, what is this thing? And then I was going to play it on my guitar, and I was like, oh, well, that's Karen Carpenter and the Carpenters singing, and I thought, well, I'll research it a little, and then I remembered Thomas James Burris's name, and then I was like, oh, that is a great Mgtow example of how things work out in gynocentric America, in the gynocentric courts, because they still get played out that way. You'll never know who most of these these multi-billionaire women's husbands are, if they are married, and generally they don't get married. But we'll hear a lot about the traditional American family when in reference to, and I think that's what I wanted to talk about, when in reference to a husband that has money. You hear these horrendous divorce settlements. You hear about all these, but when in reference to a female star like Karen Carpenter and a lot of female stars that make a lot of money, you don't hear the reference to the husband getting the money. You hear the reference to the family, the children. You hear the reference to, because that's the family. That's her family. You as a husband are not her family. You're just some husband, some guy. But when in reference to gynocentrism in America, the male figure, all of a sudden, she, because of some magical pair bonding idea, some magical pair bonding where two people are connected by some magic force, yes, she gets half the money. And I thought, well, that's gynocentrism right there and in play. And think about this. Think about you guys look over the spectrum of Hollywood stars and look over the spectrum of husbands that were married to Hollywood stars that you don't even know their name. Most of them. Thomas Burris was a name that most people wouldn't even, that you should know, because she was a historical figure of great magnitude at that time from the 70s. And that's just say no to gynocentrism. Yes, just say no to gynocentrism. But yeah, this story fascinates me because at that time, and it proves something. It proves something. We have to break these things down in our minds, and we have to give these the representation of the male family and the representation of the female family, how it's determined in court, and the importance of pronouns in those situations. One pronoun, like I say, when I hear the argument about pronouns and from Jordan Peterson, I think, well, he's one of those gynocentric fools that he just doesn't know what he's arguing. One of the pronouns that we don't hear in the Equal Rights Amendment and in our Constitution is him or he or father. That excludes all maleness from the Constitution, but we often hear the word women's rights, violence against women, and but it never says violence against men or violence. But our laws generally, assault laws, would take care of that because we're men. We're, as the definition goes, up to about 2015 or 2016, if you looked in the dictionary, then they amended it. Men were a working class. That was the definition. It wasn't the male of the species. It was the working class. Men were the workers. And that tells a lot about it. But the definition, when you start looking at family, and then a wife, family, husband, would be part of the family, but no, that gets separated from. You look at husband, and then you see automatically inserted next to it wife for legal purposes. But when you see wife, or Karen, for instance, a female name, Karen Carpenter, you don't know who James Burris was because she was a husband, and automatically the money was given to the family. The family is the brother and the mother and the father, the blood family. And we talk about this a lot, the difference between blood kinship bonding and the difference between taking on a wife. You have no blood kinship bond when you take on a wife, but a wife has the blood kinship bond to a husband if it's him that has the wealth. But the wealth of a female will never transfer to the husband, which has no blood kinship bond, because the family in that case would be the blood kinship bond. And that's how these things work out in the blue pill world, which is very gynocentric, which is very unfair to the men. And yes, I guess you would never know Thomas Burris. You would never know the name, and probably hundreds and hundreds of of other stars and people of great wealth. I mean, do you know who was that Alyssa Meyer's husband is? Do you have? She was the wrecker of Yahoo, worth probably $1 billion now. She's probably, I don't know what she's worth now, but yeah. Do you know who her husband is? But I can assure you, if it was the hat was on the other foot, the hat was on the other head, or the shoe was on the other foot, the hat was on the other head, the shoe was on the other foot. I can assure you, if it was some business executive that had a wife, you would know in some court proceedings after his death who she was. So gynocentrism is just a little example I wanted to look over today before it's football day, and I wanted to go play football. I just got back from my bike ride. As you could probably tell, I have my safety glasses and my safety jacket on and everything. And it's hard pedaling in 30 30 some degree weather, and it wears me out a little bit, and I was going to take a nap, but I figured I'd come on and talk to you guys for a few minutes and say hello and spark some kind of interest in what we talk about in Mgtow. Howdy, whiskey, stills, and tumbleweeds. You've been up late lately. I noticed this whole weekend you were up at like 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, and I wasn't there. I wasn't up that late. Yes, I was. Yes, I was. So thanks for showing up. It doesn't look like I'm going to get any kind of crowd today because I didn't advertise, and there's probably about 10 other 10 other podcasts going on. But that's what I wanted to talk about today: gynocentrism in the courts, gynocentrism, them clear-cut examples of gynocentric in a court, gynocentrism in a court. You can look up Thomas James Burris, and you can see who he was, and then you'll see the undertone in the articles. There's this undertone of hate towards him because he was the guy that was married to Karen Carpenter while she slowly starved herself to death. He didn't deserve nothing. He was an animal. That's what they project in these articles. At least the articles I read about those, and he was an animal because she died. He should have held her down and force fed her. I don't really like, when I do these things, I don't usually take these big productions that they put out for the media. I'll go and find someone like this because it's not very well known. And I think if the media doesn't get a hold of these things, they never become that gynocentric. They don't twist it. Then it doesn't get a chance to be twisted. And then the true nature of the media comes out, and that's what we got to ask ourselves. You guys go look at it, and I'll put a few in the low bar if you want to know who Thomas. Just type in Thomas James Burris and who he was, and then look at the vitriol that comes out about in the press. They'll start, they'll give some information, and then some little bit of gynocentric vitriol will just leak out. He was the guy that was married to Karen when she slowly killed herself. Or you'll see a picture. You'll never see a picture of him and her together. You'll see a picture most of the time of her with her family, with a blood kinship. And that's why I say it's always biologically, when we do Mgtow in our brains, we biologically do this thing, and we separate these things, and we hear from the MRA, we hear from these people over here and over there. What about kinship bonding? And I'll say, that magical electric force that draws you to another person. It's magic thinking is what it is. And then I say, there's blood bonds, like me and my children. They have no choice whether they think about me. They have no choice whether they love me or they hate me or whatever that is, because I am their blood father, and there's a blood bond there. There's a kinship bond. But with your wife, and we hear this in law, when it's a woman and it's taken into account her property, her money, the divorce and everything, the blood bond is the family. When it's a man, the blood bond is the wife, which is the biggest lie ever told to men, because you're not bonded to that in any way, shape, or form, besides maybe you want to put that in there. Yeah. That's the only bond you had. In the chemical reaction in your head that makes your heart sink, that's bacteria, and gets you a little dizzy, and you say, I need you, baby, which we project as love, but it's just a bacterial infection that you got from being close to another person. Father, no whiskey. So, hello, man. How are you all doing today? I was just going to do a short video just to stop by and say hello, and before I start watching football and having a few beers and eating some cheesy dip here in a little bit. I just got back from my bike ride, and I feel quite spry. I like taking the bike rides in the winter because it is so much harder if you do the mathematics on bike riding, which I do in my head, and the distance of coast and the distance of stopping distance and all that stuff. You'll soon realize that it takes 75% more effort to ride a bike in the winter because of the atmosphere, the cold bearings, and the chain, and probably a few dozen other things. So you have to put twice the effort into every pedal. And by the time you're done, I go uphill one way to the store. I always go to the store because it's convenient for me to take my bike ride and go to the store at the same time. And then I go to another store down there and do my daily running. But Mgtows, I think Mgtows are all like, we start doing the mathematics, and I was doing the mathematics and measurements in my head, and you coast. In the summer, I can coast about 165 feet from without pedaling. In the winter here, I found out, and I measured it today, that in the winter, with the atmosphere being as thick as it is and the bearings and everything, I can only coast from about 10 miles an hour down to 0 for about 20 feet. And then you start thinking that you could do the mathematics, 165 feet to 100, and then you see, oh my God, that's why you don't see people driving their bikes around in cold weather, and especially in Ohio but it's good mathematics to give children. And then sometimes I would give that to my kids and say, figure this, do the algebraical equation in this, in science and stuff like that. And when you're out, go around, ride your bike around the block, and then and then we'll do it in the summer, we'll do it in the winter. And that's the way I taught my kids to real life incidences, the tightnesses of bearings and stuff like that, and how much compression there was in there and all that. Good for you, Father. Sup, bro? I'm getting ready to hike Red Rock. Oh, you're gonna go out and hike Red Rock tonight? Is it warm where you're at? I would hope that. Well, even if it's not warm, you can hike up. I see a lot of winter hikers. But it's you can die in the winter faster. Whiskey knows that one. That's why we don't go outside when it gets sub 20 degrees. Sub 20 degrees, you can die real fast. And yeah, that's one of the things I always say about living in a northern climate and living in a southern climate. When I judge attitudes about states and stuff, and then well, you guys just don't know. We don't go out of our houses in the winter because we could die, and we have to provide ourselves with gas and electric, and or some kind of heat. You have to have some kind of heat in northern, or you will die, and that's just a fact. And when you say it to them like that, it brings on a different air of how we in the north live and how the people in the south live, and it's pretty much cheaper, and nothing's gonna, basically not a lot of things are gonna kill you like that, but it brings on a different light to how northerners do live, and especially high state northerners, and people up in Canada there, and I can appreciate that. I can appreciate the people in Alaska and the men in Alaska, and we hear those great stories. Whiskey, what is that? What is that guy's name that he went out there and he just roughed it and he built a cabin and stuff? I can't remember his name up there in Alaska. And he was again a Canadian national hero for a while because he was badass. He was just badass. And he had to survive, 20 below zero and that stuff. And that is just badass. I did some training in the Army back in the sub 20 below zero training. That was the last course that we were going to take, and the special ops units was the last course, because Russian interests were peaking about that time coming through, so they wanted us guys prepared, so they gave us sub 20 zero training, and they gave us sub 20 zero sleeping bags and breathers on them and stuff like that, which has really sucked. It sucked bad. Yeah, it's not a safe one. Did Golden Gate last week, 10-foot strip. Oh yeah, I got to watch out for those ice strips. When I drive my bike out here, it's icy, on the roads. I have good knobbies on my bike, but once in a while I get on the ice and I'm like, just keep going straight and don't put on the brakes. That's the same rules with cars. Keep going straight. Look before, find a designated area where you want to land and try to make it through it. Never hit the brakes. So, I'm not going to go on too long and make this into an hour and a half, because I want to get back to my Sunday and enjoy my thing. I have some snacks to make and stuff like that, and get ready for the football and the Sunday. I just wanted to come on and bless you all, and Mgtow, go Mgtow, and you know, just all your sins are forgiven from the past, and you develop a new life, and the more you get into it, the better off it's gonna be. And I'm not garnishing a lot of patrons today, so I think I'm just gonna wrap this one up and go do my stuff. And like always, thanks a lot for coming around, man. Thanks a lot for listening. And but that's a question for you. Ask yourself today who Thomas James Burris was, and then think about the mating rules that we have in place, and think about what happens when a female and her extended family and a male with her extended family. And you'll see the gynocentrism, and you'll see that there's no blood bond between husband and wife unless it's wife to husband. There is a blood bond between wife and husband. Yeah, that's what they say, at least. And you have to pay for her after that. But if it's wife to husband, it goes directly to the family. And James Burris was a great example of that. And that's Karen Carpenter's husband, and the Carpenter family, because that was her family. Richard was, or James Thomas was never her family. And that's the way Mgtows think about it. There is no blood bond that between me and another woman. There's chemical reactions that happen. I can't get pregnant. She can. Her body, her choice. Go on with your life and do what you want to do, but don't try to affect my life. And that's the way Mgtows think about things, because scientifically it's just a truth. But in the news, in the media, in courts, and things that are decided by gynocentric men of sympology. I guess we have to develop a sympology for how to determine courts, because it's 100% pure sympology and gynocentrism. That's the way they determine scientific facts. Which is ridiculous. It's just ridiculous. So I didn't want to go on too long, and that's what my short podcast was about. And you guys have a great day, and maybe I'll come around later after I watch some football and have some fun. And but you guys take it, and like always, thanks for coming around, and thanks for listening, and most of all, thanks for being a Mgtow. Mgtow.